For 10 years, Alpha Adrian forced his true Luna to sacrifice her life to keep another woman alive. Every time Isabella got sick, Elena healed her. Every healing stole part of Elena's lifespan. But what nobody knew was that Isabella wasn't dying naturally. Someone was poisoning her. And the night Elena finally refused to save her again, a powerful alpha exposed a secret that shattered an entire kingdom. Because Elena was never the victim they thought she was. She was something far more dangerous. And someone had spent 10 years trying to stop her from awakening. The moon ceremony was the most sacred night in the Silver Claw Pack. Hundreds of wolves filled the Grand Moon Hall. Silver banners hung from towering stone pillars. The scent of excitement drifted through the crowd. Tonight, the future Alpha would discover the woman chosen for him by the moon goddess herself. At the center of the hall stood Alpha Adrian Blackwood. Tall, powerful, respected, the future ruler of the largest pack in the region. Beside the ceremonial altar stood Elena Ashford. Her heart pounded so hard she feared everyone could hear it. She had loved Adrian for years. Not in secret. Everyone knew. The servants knew. The warriors knew. The elders knew. Even Adrian knew. Whenever the future Luna was mentioned, her name was always the first one spoken. The crowd believed tonight would simply confirm what everyone already expected. The moon priest raised his hands. Silence fell across the hall. Moonlight poured through the crystal dome overhead. The sacred flames suddenly burned silver. A collective gasp echoed through the crowd. The moon goddess had spoken. The priest's eyes widened. Then he smiled. Alpha Adrian Blackwood. The entire hall held its breath. The moon goddess has chosen your mate. Adrian's eyes slowly turned, until they landed on Elena. For a moment she forgot how to breathe. A powerful warmth exploded inside her chest. The mate bond. Real. Sacred. Undeniable. The crowd erupted. Cheers filled the hall. Warriors pounded their chests. Servants cried with happiness. Several elders smiled knowingly. Everything was perfect. Everything Elena had dreamed about was finally happening. Then came the scream. The palace gates burst open. The sound echoed through the celebration like a blade cutting through silk. The cheering stopped instantly. Every head turned. A woman stumbled into the hall, covered in dust. Her dress torn. Her skin pale. Blood stained her hands. She took 2 shaky steps, then collapsed onto the marble floor. The entire room froze. Adrian's face lost all color, because he recognized her immediately. Isabella, his first love. The woman who had vanished years ago without explanation. The woman he once believed he would spend the rest of his life with. The woman he never truly forgot. 1,000 whispers erupted throughout the hall. What is she doing here? I thought she was dead. Why does she look like that? Adrian moved before anyone else. He rushed toward her, dropping to his knees beside her. Isabella. His voice cracked. Elena felt her stomach tighten. Something inside her suddenly felt wrong. Very wrong. Isabella slowly opened her eyes. Weak. Barely conscious. She looked directly at Adrian. Tears slid down her face. Then she whispered only 2 words. Help me. Before losing consciousness. The celebration was forgotten. The bond was forgotten. The ceremony was forgotten. Within minutes the healers carried Isabella into the palace infirmary. The crowd remained outside, anxious, confused, whispering. Elena stood alone, watching the closed doors, watching Adrian disappear behind them without once looking back. A tiny crack formed inside her heart. The first crack. She didn't know it yet, but it would not be the last. Hours passed. The celebration hall became silent. Finally, the infirmary doors opened. The chief healer emerged. His expression terrified everyone. Adrian immediately stepped forward. Tell me. The healer hesitated, then delivered the verdict. She is dying. The crowd gasped. The healer continued. We have never seen anything like this. Her wolf is failing. Her life force is collapsing. We cannot stop it. Adrian's face hardened. There must be something. The healer shook his head. We've tried everything. Medicine. Ancient remedies. Sacred herbs. Spirit healing. Nothing works. A terrible silence followed. Then another elder stepped forward. One of the oldest wolves in the kingdom. Elder Magnus. His eyes moved slowly through the crowd, until they settled on Elena. The old wolf stared. Longer than necessary. As if seeing something nobody else could see. His expression changed. Fear. Recognition. Hope. All at once. Elena frowned. Why are you looking at me? The elder said nothing. For several long seconds. Then he whispered words that would change every life in the room. There may be one way. The entire hall turned toward him. Adrian stepped forward immediately. What way? The elder's gaze never left Elena. And for the first time that night, Elena felt afraid. Very afraid. Because whatever answer he was about to give, she already knew her life would never be the same again. The silence inside the infirmary became unbearable. Every eye remained fixed on Elder Magnus. The old wolf slowly approached Elena. His expression was unreadable. Not pity, not fear. Something far more complicated. The room parted as he stopped before her. You never told anyone, did you? Elena lowered her eyes. Immediately, several elders exchanged worried looks. Adrian frowned. What is he talking about? Elena remained silent. The hesitation alone was enough to make the room uneasy. Elder Magnus released a heavy breath, then finally spoke. Elena was born under a silver moon. Several gasps erupted. The older wolves immediately understood. The younger ones looked confused. Adrian stepped forward. What does that mean? The elder's face darkened. It means she carries the moon blessing. The room exploded with whispers. Even some healers looked shocked. One healer actually took a step backward. Adrian looked from one face to another. Someone explain? Elder Magnus nodded slowly. The moon blessing is one of the rarest gifts ever granted by the moon goddess. He turned toward Isabella's unconscious body. A dying wolf can be saved. Hope immediately appeared in Adrian's eyes. Then Magnus continued. But every life restored comes with a price. The hope vanished. The elder looked directly at Elena. The blessing transfers life force. The dying survive. The healer weakens. The room fell silent. Adrian stared at Elena, unable to process what he had just heard. The elder continued. Every healing steals a piece of the healer's lifespan. A collective gasp swept through the infirmary. The revelation hit everyone like a hammer. Suddenly, dozens of eyes turned toward Elena, not with admiration, with shock and concern, because this was no ordinary gift. This was sacrifice. Pure sacrifice. Adrian looked horrified. You knew this? Elena nodded. Slowly. The room became even quieter, because her answer raised a far worse question. If Elena knew, then why had she never told anyone? Almost as if hearing their thoughts, Elena spoke softly. Because I hoped I would never have to use it. A painful silence followed. The documentary truth was simple. Some gifts felt more like blessings. Others felt more like curses. The moon blessing was both. It could save lives. But every miracle demanded payment. And the payment always came from the same person. The healer. The one giving. Never the one receiving. Adrian stared at Isabella. Then at Elena. Then back at Isabella. The conflict in his eyes became obvious. His first love was dying. His mate might save her. But saving her would hurt Elena. For the first time that night, the future Alpha looked completely helpless. Then something unexpected happened. Isabella suddenly began convulsing. The healers rushed toward her. Her breathing became shallow, painful, violent. One healer cursed under his breath. She's getting worse. Another checked her pulse. His face immediately drained of color. We're losing her. The room erupted into panic. Several healers scrambled for medicines. Others attempted emergency treatments. Nothing worked. Nothing. Adrian moved toward the bed. His hands shook. For a brief moment, the powerful future Alpha looked like a frightened young man again. The woman he once loved was dying right in front of him, and he could do absolutely nothing. Then he turned toward Elena. The entire room seemed to freeze. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone. Adrian slowly crossed the room, stopping directly in front of her. Not Alpha and Luna. Not leader and subject. Just Adrian. And Elena. The two people who had dreamed of this mating ceremony for years. His voice cracked.
Please.
Just one word. But it carried everything.
Fear.
Desperation.
Hope.
Elena felt her heart break. Not because of Isabella. Because of him. Because Adrian was looking at her the way he used to. The way he hadn't looked at her all night. The way she had always hoped he would. For a brief moment she wondered if saying no would change everything. Maybe Isabella would die. Maybe Adrian would hate her. Maybe their future would be destroyed. But maybe she would finally choose herself. The thought lasted only seconds. Because Elena had loved Adrian for too long. Far too long. And love had a way of making sacrifices feel reasonable, even when they weren't. She smiled sadly, then nodded. I'll do it. The relief on Adrian's face was immediate. So immediate that something painful twisted inside Elena's chest. Not because he was happy, because she realized how badly he needed this. How badly he needed Isabella to live. More than he needed anything else. Even tonight. Even now. The healers quickly prepared the ritual chamber. Ancient candles surrounded the stone platform. Moon symbols glowed across the floor. The atmosphere became sacred. Dangerously sacred. Several elders watched nervously. One elder quietly whispered, "This should never have happened." Another answered, "Yet here we are." Nobody noticed Luna, Celeste, standing near the shadows. Watching, listening, and smiling. Only for a second. A tiny smile, gone almost immediately. But it was there. The first hidden clue. The first invisible betrayal. The ritual began. Elena stepped into the center circle. Isabella was placed opposite her. The moon symbols illuminated beneath their feet. Silver light erupted around them. The room trembled. Elena immediately felt the connection.
Pain. Cold.
Weakness. Something was being pulled from inside her. Something important. Something alive. Her knees nearly buckled. The healers watched in awe. Silver energy flowed from Elena's body into Isabella, second after second, minute after minute. The transfer continued. Then suddenly, Isabella inhaled sharply. Her eyes flew open. Color returned to her face. The dying wolf was alive. Cheers erupted throughout the chamber. The healers celebrated. The elders sighed with relief. Adrian rushed to Isabella's side. His face filled with joy. Pure joy. He grabbed Isabella's hand, calling her name, making sure she was truly awake, making sure she was truly safe. Nobody noticed Elena collapsing. Nobody except one person. Elder Magnus. His eyes widened, because while everyone celebrated Isabella's survival, he had noticed something else. Something far more terrifying. A silver mark had appeared on Elena's wrist.
Thin. Glowing.
Beautiful. And horrifying. The old elder's face turned pale, because he knew exactly what it meant. And because the mark wasn't supposed to appear after a first healing. Not ever. Magnus slowly looked toward Luna Celeste. For one brief second their eyes met, and the fear inside him doubled. Because Celeste wasn't surprised. She was expecting it. The elder's heart began pounding. A terrible realization started forming inside his mind. One question. One terrifying question. How much did the future Luna already know? For a while, everyone believed the nightmare was over. Isabella recovered. The healers celebrated. The pack relaxed. The moon ceremony was rescheduled. Life seemed ready to continue. At least that was what Elena wanted to believe. Then, 3 weeks later, a servant came running through the palace corridors, screaming,
panicking, crying.
"She's collapsing." The words echoed through the castle. Elena's stomach immediately dropped, because she already knew who they were talking about. By the time she reached the infirmary, Adrian was already there. Isabella lay on the bed, barely conscious, exactly as she had been before. The healers looked terrified. One healer whispered, It shouldn't be possible. Another shook his head. We cured her. We saw it happen, yet, somehow, the sickness had returned. The room filled with confusion. No one understood. No one except Elder Magnus. The old wolf stood silently near the wall, watching, thinking, worried, very worried, because his eyes had already noticed something nobody else had. The silver mark on Elena's wrist had grown. Only slightly, but enough. Enough to make his heart sink. Adrian turned toward Elena. Their eyes met. Neither needed words. The answer was obvious. Another healing. Another sacrifice. Another piece of Elena's life. The documentary truth was simple. The first sacrifice is always a choice. The second becomes an obligation. The third becomes expectation. And expectations can become chains. Elena stepped into the ritual circle once again. The silver light returned. The pain returned. The weakness returned. And Isabella survived. Again. The entire pack celebrated. Again. And life moved on. Again. At least for a few months. Until it happened again. This time Isabella collapsed during a festival. One moment she was laughing. The next she was unconscious. The celebration instantly became chaos. The healers rushed forward. The same symptoms. The same sickness. The same mystery. And once again, the same solution. Elena. Only Elena. By now the ritual chamber no longer felt sacred. It felt familiar. Dangerously familiar. The elders watched. The healers watched. The servants watched. Everyone waiting for Elena to save the day. Again. And she did. Again. But something had changed. This time Adrian didn't thank her. Not afterward. Not later. Not ever. At first Elena told herself he was worried. Distracted. Overwhelmed. Then it happened again. Months later. Another collapse. Another emergency. Another ritual. Another sacrifice. And afterward, nothing. No gratitude. No concern. No questions. No acknowledgement. As though Elena's suffering had become part of the process. As ordinary as breathing. The emotional shift happened so slowly that almost nobody noticed. At first Adrian had looked guilty every time she healed Isabella. Then relieved. Then grateful. Then accustomed. And finally, entitled. One evening Isabella became ill again. The healer sent for Elena immediately. She arrived exhausted.
Pale.
Barely able to stand. The previous healing had left her bedridden for days. Adrian looked at her. Not with concern. Not with worry. Only expectation. You're here. 3 simple words. Yet they struck harder than any insult.
Not.
Are you alright?
Not.
Can you do this?
Not.
Thank you. Just. You're here. Because in his mind, Elena always came. Elena always healed. Elena always sacrificed. The audience of fate could see what Adrian couldn't. He was beginning to depend on her suffering. The mystery deepened with every passing month. Because none of it made sense. The healers were confused. The elders were confused. Even Elder Magnus was confused. Why did Isabella keep relapsing? No illness behaved like this. No curse behaved like this. No known poison behaved like this. Yet every few months the sickness returned. Stronger. Hungrier. Deadlier. Almost as if something wanted Isabella to stay sick. Almost as if someone wanted Elena to keep healing. The question grew larger with every relapse. Who benefited from this? One night Magnus secretly examined Isabella's medical records. Every symptom. Every treatment. Every recovery. Hours passed. Then dawn arrived. And the old elder discovered something terrifying. Every relapse occurred shortly after Isabella visited the palace's private gardens. The same gardens. Every time. The discovery raised more questions than answers. What was happening there? Who was she meeting? Was someone hurting her? Or was Isabella hiding something? Meanwhile, Elena continued weakening. Her appetite vanished. Her wolf rarely appeared. Dark circles formed beneath her eyes. Simple tasks exhausted her. The healers blamed stress. The servants blamed overwork. Nobody connected it to the blessing. Nobody except Magnus. And someone else. Luna, Celeste. The future Luna watched everything. Silently. Patiently. Every healing. Every relapse. Every sacrifice. She never missed one. One evening, she found Elena sitting alone in the moon garden. Looking exhausted. The older woman sat beside her. Gentle.
Kind.
Motherly. Exactly the way she always appeared. You have such a beautiful heart. Elena smiled weakly. I just want everyone to be happy. Celeste touched her cheek. A warm gesture. Comforting. Almost loving. Yet as she walked away, a strange smile appeared on her face. Gone before anyone could notice. The smile of someone watching a plan unfold perfectly. Days later, Isabella collapsed again. This time worse than ever. Blood appeared. The healers panicked. Warriors were sent running through the palace. The emergency bells rang. The entire kingdom held its breath. And once again, everyone looked toward Elena. Only Elena. As if her life belonged to the pack. As if her future belonged to Isabella. As if her sacrifice was endless. The ritual succeeded. Isabella survived. Again. But afterward Elena nearly fainted. Magnus caught her before she hit the floor. And when he grabbed her arm, his blood turned cold. The silver mark had spread far beyond her wrist. It now stretched halfway up her forearm. Thicker. Brighter. Growing. The old elder's face drained of color. Because he had spent decades studying moon blessings. And he knew something terrible. The mark was advancing far too quickly. Far faster than it should. Far faster than nature allowed. Which meant only one thing. Something unnatural was happening. Something hidden. Something dangerous. And if Magnus was right, Elena wasn't losing years anymore. She was losing her life. The old elder slowly looked across the room. Toward Luna Celeste. Toward Isabella. Toward Adrian. Then back, toward the glowing mark. One question echoed through his mind. Time did not heal the wounds inside Silverclaw Pack.
It deepened them.
The seasons changed. Winter became spring. Spring became summer. Summer became autumn. And every few months, the same nightmare returned. Isabella collapsed. Elena sacrificed. Isabella survived. Elena weakened. Again. And again. And again. Years began slipping away. Not from the kingdom. From Elena. The documentary truth was cruel. Most tragedies happen suddenly. This one happened slowly. So slowly that nobody noticed they were watching a woman disappear. The first thing to fade was Elena's wolf. Once powerful and vibrant, her wolf appeared less often. When she shifted, exhaustion followed. Simple training sessions left her trembling. The pack healers blamed stress. The elders blamed overwork. No one wanted to acknowledge the obvious. Every healing was taking something. Something permanent. Something irreplaceable. Meanwhile, Isabella continued living.
Continued laughing.
Continued attending ceremonies. Continued standing beside Adrian. The woman who was supposed to die kept surviving. And the woman keeping her alive kept fading. The imbalance should have terrified everyone. Instead, it became normal. 1 year after the moon ceremony, Adrian postponed the mating ceremony. Only a few months, he promised. Until Isabella recovered completely. Elena understood. At least she told herself she did. A dying woman deserved compassion. A future Luna should be understanding. So she waited. Months became a year. A year became 2. 2 became 3. Then Isabella collapsed again. Everything was delayed once more.
The 4th year arrived.
Adrian stood before Elena in the palace gardens. The moonlight illuminated his face. For one brief moment, Elena allowed herself hope. Maybe tonight. Maybe finally. Maybe after all these years. Then Adrian spoke. We should wait a little longer. The words hit harder than any rejection. Not because they were cruel. Because they had become familiar. A pattern. A sentence she had heard too many times. Elena smiled anyway. Because she loved him. And because loving someone sometimes makes you accept things you never should. The years continued. By year 6, the pack had stopped discussing the future Luna. By year 7, they stopped asking when the ceremony would happen. By year 8, they stopped believing it would happen at all. And by year 9, something worse happened. The servants gave Elena a new name. Not behind her back. Not secretly. Openly.
Casually.
The Cure. The Cure is heading to the infirmary. The Cure saved Lady Isabella again. The Cure has been summoned. Not Elena. Not Luna. Not Mate. The Cure. A title that sounded useful, necessary, valuable, yet somehow stripped away everything human about her. The first time Elena heard it, she froze. The second time, she smiled politely. The third time, she pretended not to hear, because correcting them would only make it hurt more. One afternoon, Elena entered the palace kitchen. Several servants were gossiping. They didn't notice her. The Cure healed her again yesterday. I heard Lady Isabella nearly died. Good thing the Cure was available. The Cure. The Cure.
The Cure.
Not one person said her name. Not one. Elena quietly turned around and left. Nobody realized she had been standing there. Nobody apologized. Nobody even knew. Elsewhere in the kingdom, another mystery continued growing. Elder Magnus had spent years investigating Isabella's illness.
Years.
And the more he learned, the less sense it made. Medical records vanished. Witnesses changed their stories. Certain healers suddenly retired. Others disappeared entirely. Every answer created two new questions.
Someone was hiding something.
Magnus knew it. He just couldn't prove it.
Yet.
One night he discovered another strange detail. Every healer who examined Isabella closely eventually requested reassignment. Every single one. None explained why. All simply left. The pattern was impossible to ignore. What were they seeing? And why were they afraid to speak? The mystery deepened. Meanwhile, Luna Celeste remained untouchable, respected, admired,
loved.
The perfect future Luna. She visited Isabella often, comforted her, protected her, guided her. She also visited Elena, bringing tea, offering advice, acting like a second mother. No one suspected her, not even Elena, especially not Elena, because betrayal is most effective when it comes disguised as kindness. The 10th year arrived. 10 years. 10 years since the moon ceremony.
10 years since the mate bond.
10 years since Adrian promised forever. And on the anniversary of that night, Isabella collapsed again. The worst episode yet. The healers panicked. The kingdom held its breath. And Elena prepared for another sacrifice. By now the ritual felt different. Not sacred. Not noble. Heavy. Like carrying chains no one else could see. The transfer began. Silver light filled the chamber. Pain exploded through Elena's body. Far worse than before. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. She felt weaker than ever. Her knees buckled. Her vision blurred. The healers barely managed to support her. Yet Isabella recovered. Again. As always. The ritual ended. The celebration began. As always. And Elena quietly walked away. Alone. As always. Hours later she stood on a deserted balcony, overlooking the kingdom. The moon hung high above. Beautiful. Cold.
Distant.
For the first time in years, Elena allowed herself to ask a question she had spent a decade avoiding. What if this never ends? The thought terrified her. Because deep down, she already knew the answer. A violent cough interrupted her thoughts. She covered her mouth. Another cough followed. Then another. Pain ripped through her chest. Elena slowly lowered her hand and froze. Dark red blood stained her palm. Her breathing stopped. The world seemed to stop. For several seconds, she simply stared, unable to move, unable to think, unable to breathe, because she understood exactly what this meant. The blessing was no longer weakening her. It was killing her, slowly, relentlessly. And worst of all, no one knew. No one saw. No one came looking. Not Adrian. Not the healers. Not the elders. No one. Alone beneath the moonlight. Elena wiped away the blood. Forced a smile. and whispered the lie she had been telling herself for 10 years. Just a little longer. But somewhere in the darkness, unseen eyes had witnessed everything. Someone had seen the blood. Someone had seen her collapse against the balcony rail. Someone had finally noticed she was dying. And that person had just arrived in the kingdom. The morning after Elena coughed blood beneath the moonlit balcony, she told nobody. Not Adrian. Not the healers. Not Elder Magnus. Nobody. For 10 years she had carried everyone else's pain. Carrying her own had become second nature. Outside her chamber window, Silverclaw Kingdom continued as normal. Servants hurried through palace corridors. Warriors trained in the courtyard. Merchants opened their stalls. The kingdom lived. While Elena quietly died. The documentary truth was simple. People often notice a sudden tragedy. They rarely notice a slow one. Especially when the person suffering never complains. Late that afternoon, Elena returned to her room after visiting the infirmary. Isabella had recovered from another collapse. Again. The healers celebrated another miracle. Again. And Adrian remained by Isabella's side. Again. Nothing had changed. Or so Elena thought. The moment she entered her room, she froze. Something sat on her desk. A black envelope. No royal seal. No family crest. No sender. No name. No explanation. Only 3 words written across the front. Read alone. A cold chill crawled up Elena's spine. Her wolf stirred uneasily. Someone had entered her private chambers. Someone who wanted to remain invisible. Slowly, she locked the door. Closed the curtains. Then, opened the envelope. Several documents slid onto the desk. Medical reports. Treatment records. Poison analyses. Healer testimonies. Pages upon pages. At first none of it made sense. Then she saw a familiar name. Isabella. Elena immediately sat down. Her heart began racing. She turned to the first page. Then the second. Then the third. The deeper she read, the colder she became. Because every document said the same thing. Every single one. The illness killing Isabella was not natural. It never had been. A healer's report from 8 years ago stated, traces of nightshade venom detected. Another report from 6 years ago, foreign toxin present. A third report from 3 years ago, poison contamination confirmed. Elena's hands started trembling. This wasn't one mistake. This wasn't one accident. This was a pattern. A horrifying pattern. Someone had been poisoning Isabella. Repeatedly. For years. The revelation hit like lightning. Everything suddenly changed. Every collapse. Every emergency. Every healing. Every sacrifice. Everything. The question wasn't how Isabella kept getting sick. The question was why someone kept making her sick. And if the reports were real, then someone had deliberately trapped Elena inside this nightmare. A new fear settled over her. Who would do this? Who would poison Isabella for years? And more importantly,
why?
The documents offered another shock. Several healer statements had been removed from official records. Deleted. Hidden.
Buried.
Someone powerful had covered this up. Someone inside the kingdom. Someone with influence. Someone with access. The mystery grew darker. Elena continued reading. One report had been partially burned. Another had blood stains. A third contained a handwritten note. Just one sentence. She was never supposed to survive this long. Elena's breath caught.
Who wrote that?
Who was the note referring to? Isabella? Or someone else? Suddenly, another realization struck her. If Isabella had been poisoned for years, then every healing session had been unnecessary. Not because Isabella wasn't sick. Because the sickness had been intentionally reintroduced. Again. And again. And again. A horrifying possibility emerged. Someone wasn't trying to kill Isabella. Someone was trying to keep her sick. The room felt colder. The shadows seemed darker. And for the first time, Elena wondered something terrifying. Was she the real target? The question refused to leave her mind. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the palace, Elder Magnus was making discoveries of his own. He had secretly tracked several missing medical records. Every trail ended the same way. Someone high-ranking had ordered their removal. Someone untouchable. Someone protected. Magnus didn't yet know who, but he was getting close. Too close. Back inside her chamber, Elena found the final document. Unlike the others, this page contained no medical information, only a list of dates. The exact dates Isabella collapsed. Elena compared them with her own memories. Her blood turned cold. Every collapse happened shortly after Isabella met privately with someone. The same person. Every single time. The records didn't reveal a name. Only a title. Elsie. Elena frowned. Elsie. Who was Elsie? Another mystery. Another question. Another piece of a puzzle she couldn't yet solve. Then, a strange smell reached her. Smoke. Elena froze. A second later came the crackling sound.
Fire.
The curtains suddenly erupted into flames. The room exploded into chaos. Heat surged across the chamber. Glass shattered. Wood ignited. The fire spread impossibly fast. Too fast. Almost as if someone had planned it. Elena grabbed the documents immediately. A burning beam crashed from the ceiling. Sparks exploded everywhere. The smoke became suffocating. Someone screamed in the hallway. Servants began shouting. The entire floor descended into panic. Elena stumbled toward the door,
Coughing.
clutching the evidence against her chest. Another section of ceiling collapsed. Flames blocked her escape route. The heat became unbearable. For one terrifying moment,
She thought she might die.
then the door burst open. Several warriors rushed inside, dragging her out. The moment Elena reached safety, she turned back and watched her room disappear beneath an inferno. Everything she owned,
Gone.
destroyed, consumed. Almost everything. Because hidden beneath her cloak, the documents survived. The evidence survived. And whoever started the fire didn't know it.
Yet.
As Elena stared at the burning chamber, one terrifying realization settled into her heart. The fire was no accident. Someone knew about the letter. Someone knew she had the evidence. Someone was afraid. Very afraid. Which meant she was finally getting close to the truth. The question was, the fire changed everything. Officially, it was called an accident. A faulty lantern. A fallen candle. An unfortunate tragedy. Nobody believed it. Especially Elena. Someone had tried to destroy the evidence. Someone had tried to silence the truth. And now Elena knew one thing for certain. She wasn't imagining the danger anymore. It was real. Very real. The documentary truth was becoming impossible to ignore. The moment hidden secrets begin surfacing, desperate people begin making mistakes. And someone inside Silverclaw Kingdom was becoming desperate. 3 days after the fire, another unexpected event shook the kingdom. Trumpets echoed across the palace walls. Warriors rushed to their stations. Servants abandoned their work. The gates opened. And an enormous procession entered the capital. Hundreds of elite warriors. Black armored wolves. Royal banners. Silver war horses. Every person in the kingdom recognized those colors. The crowd immediately began whispering, "No, it can't be him. Why is he here?" Nobody invited him. Fear spread almost instantly, because only one ruler used those banners. Alpha Riker, the Shadow King, the strongest alpha among the neighboring territories. A man whose name alone ended wars. A ruler feared by kings. A predator feared by alphas. Nobody knew why he had come, and that uncertainty terrified everyone. From a palace balcony, Elena watched the arrival. The procession felt different. Not ceremonial. Not friendly. Calculated. Disciplined. Dangerous. At the front rode a massive black horse. Its rider never smiled. Never waved. Never acknowledged the crowd. His silver eyes scanned everything. Observing. Evaluating. Judging. Alpha Riker. Even from a distance, his presence felt overwhelming. The air itself seemed heavier around him. A king-level alpha. The kind of alpha ordinary wolves instinctively lowered their eyes before. Then something strange happened. As Riker passed beneath Elena's balcony, his horse suddenly stopped. The entire procession stopped with it. A silence swept across the courtyard. Riker slowly lifted his head and looked directly at Elena. Not past her. Not around her. At her. For several seconds, neither moved. Neither spoke. Neither looked away. Then Riker frowned. Not because of her appearance. Not because of her title. Because of something else. Something only he seemed to notice. A strange expression crossed his face. Recognition.
Shock. Concern.
Then the moment ended. The procession continued. But Elena couldn't shake the feeling. Something about that look had felt wrong. As if he had seen something no one else could see. Elsewhere in the palace, Elder Magnus watched the arrival with equal concern. Because he had noticed the same thing. Riker had recognized something. The question was, what? Hours later, the kingdom hosted a welcoming banquet. The great hall filled with nobles, warriors, elders, healers, and royal guests. Adrian sat at the head table beside Isabella. As always, Elena sat further away. As always, some habits had become traditions. The feast began. Music played. Conversations filled the room. Then Riker entered. The atmosphere immediately changed. Every conversation quieted. Every eye followed him. Power had a way of demanding attention. Without speaking a word, Riker acknowledged nobody. He simply walked toward his assigned seat. Then stopped. Halfway through the hall, his eyes had found Elena again. The second time in one day. This time the reaction was stronger. His expression hardened. Almost immediately. As if something had confirmed his suspicions. Elena looked away first. Suddenly uncomfortable. Because being noticed by Riker felt different. Not admiring. Not interested. Investigative. Like he was solving a puzzle. A puzzle she didn't understand. The feast continued. But Riker barely touched his food. His attention kept returning to Elena. And eventually he saw it. A small glimpse beneath her sleeve. The silver mark. His entire body froze. The cup in his hand stopped moving. The expression on his face changed instantly. Shock. Pure shock. For the first time all evening, the feared Shadow King looked genuinely disturbed. Across the hall, Elder Magnus noticed. And his stomach dropped. Because Riker recognized the mark. Without explanation. Without hesitation. He knew exactly what it was. The mystery deepened. How? How could a foreign alpha know about a blessing most elders barely understood? What had Riker seen before? What wasn't he saying? Later that evening, Elena escaped the banquet. The noise, the stares, the exhaustion. Everything felt overwhelming. She found refuge in the palace gardens. The moonlight painted silver patterns across the flowers. For a few precious minutes, she was alone. Or so she thought. A branch snapped behind her. Elena turned. Riker stood several feet away. Silent. Watching. Not threatening. Not hostile. Just watching. The atmosphere instantly became tense. Neither spoke. Then Riker's eyes dropped to her wrist. To the mark. Partially hidden beneath her sleeve. His jaw tightened. The silence stretched. Finally, Elena spoke. What do you want? Riker didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked a question. Who has been treating you? The question caught her off guard. What? His eyes never left the silver mark. Who has been monitoring your condition? Condition. Not blessing. Not gift. Condition. As though he viewed it as an illness. A wound. Something dangerous. Elena frowned. No one. The answer seemed to disturb him even more. For the first time, genuine anger flashed across his face. Not at her. At someone else. Someone unseen. The documentary truth was simple. A person can hide their suffering from strangers, but not from someone who already knows what suffering looks like. And Riker was looking at Elena as though he had seen this before. Far too many times. Finally, he stepped closer. Close enough to see the spreading silver veins beneath her skin. Close enough to confirm his fears. Close enough to realize the truth. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, darker, almost disbelieving. That's impossible. A chill ran through Elena. Because whatever Riker was seeing, it terrified him. And a man like Riker was not easily frightened. The Shadow King slowly looked into her eyes, then toward the palace, toward the kingdom, toward the people who had allowed this to happen. A dangerous silence followed, the kind that comes before a storm. Then he asked the question that changed everything. The question no one else had ever asked. The question that instantly made Elena realize he understood more than anyone. Riker's voice dropped to a whisper. How many years have they been feeding on your life? The world seemed to stop, because for the first time, someone had finally seen the truth. The question haunted Elena. For 3 days. 3 sleepless nights. 3 days of replaying Riker's words. How many years have they been feeding on your life?
No one had ever described it that way.
Not the elders. Not the healers. Not Adrian. No one. Yet the more Elena thought about it, the more impossible it became to ignore. Because Riker wasn't entirely wrong. For 10 years, she had given, and given, and given, while everyone else simply took. The documentary truth was becoming painful. The most dangerous lies are not the ones others tell us. They're the ones we tell ourselves. And for years Elena had convinced herself everything was temporary. Everything was necessary. Everything was worth it. Now she wasn't so sure. Then disaster struck. Again. The emergency bells rang just after midnight. The sound echoed throughout the palace. Servants ran through corridors. Guards rushed toward the infirmary. Healers abandoned their beds. Panic spread instantly.
Everyone knew what the bells meant. Isabella.
Elena closed her eyes. The nightmare was starting again. By the time she reached the infirmary, chaos had already erupted. Healers surrounded Isabella's bed. Medical equipment littered the floor. Blood stained the sheets. The atmosphere felt different this time.
Worse.
Much worse. The moment Elena entered, several healers looked relieved. Not because she had arrived. Because they believed the solution had arrived. The cure. Not Elena.
The cure.
The title echoed through her mind. And for the first time, it made her angry. A healer approached Adrian, his face pale with fear. She's fading too quickly. Another healer interrupted. We can't stabilize her. A third whispered. She's never been this bad. Adrian immediately looked toward Elena. That familiar look. The look that no longer asked. The look that expected. The room fell silent. Everyone waited. Everyone knew what happened next. Elena healed Isabella. Isabella survived. Life continued. That was how the story always ended. Except tonight. Something felt different. Very different. Because Elena's legs were trembling. Her breathing felt shallow. And beneath her sleeve, the silver mark had spread almost to her elbow. The blessing was consuming her.
Slowly.
Relentlessly. And, for the first time, she was afraid. Not for Isabella. For herself. A terrifying realization settled into her chest. If she entered the ritual circle tonight, she might not walk out. Adrian crossed the room, stopping directly in front of her. The future Alpha looked exhausted, terrified, desperate. But he still spoke the same words. Help her.
Not.
Are you alright?
Not.
Can you survive this?
Not.
What will this cost you? Only Isabella. Always Isabella. The emotional wound cut deeper than expected. Because even now, even after everything, Elena had still hoped. Some small part of her had hoped Adrian would finally see her.
He didn't.
A healer interrupted. Lady Isabella doesn't have much time. The pressure instantly increased. All eyes turned toward Elena. Waiting. Expecting. Demanding. The same pattern. The same sacrifice. The same ending. Again. And then something happened that nobody expected. Elena shook her head. Silence. Complete silence. Several healers froze. The elders stared. Even Isabella's breathing seemed to pause.
No.
The word barely left her lips. Yet it felt louder than thunder. Adrian blinked, as if he had misheard. What? Elena swallowed. Her throat felt tight, painful, but she forced herself to continue. I can't. The room erupted. Shocked whispers spread everywhere. Disbelief filled every face. Because Elena always agreed. Always.
Not tonight.
For the first time in 10 years, she chose herself. The documentary truth was devastating. When people become accustomed to your sacrifice, your boundaries feel like betrayal. And Adrian felt betrayed. The fear in his eyes quickly transformed into anger. Raw anger. Years of pressure. Years of frustration. Years of dependency. Everything exploded at once. You can't. His voice rose. The room became even quieter. One life depends on you. Elena flinched, because she had heard that argument countless times. Always Isabella's life. Never hers. Adrian stepped closer, his control slipping. How can you stand there while she's dying? The accusation hit like a slap. The healers looked uncomfortable. Several elders lowered their eyes. But nobody spoke. Nobody defended Elena. Nobody. Adrian continued, his words becoming sharper.
Crueler.
You've become selfish. The room froze. Elena stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. 10 years. 10 years of sacrifices. And this was what he saw. Selfish. The word cut deeper than any wound. But Adrian wasn't finished. Heartless. Another blow. Cruel. Another. Ungrateful. The final one. Each word landed harder than the last, because they came from the person she had nearly died for. Over and over again. For a moment Elena simply stood there.
Silent. Broken.
The room waited. No one moved. No one breathed. Then Elena finally spoke. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was tired. So incredibly tired. She looked directly into Adrian's eyes and asked the question nobody wanted to answer. And what about my life? Silence. No response. Not from Adrian. Not from the healers. Not from the elders. Not from anyone. The silence itself became the answer. Because nobody had thought about her life. Not really. Not for years. The realization swept through the room like poison. Several healers looked ashamed. One servant began crying. Even Elder Magnus lowered his head. Because Elena was right. And everyone knew it. Then something unexpected happened. A weak voice emerged from the bed. Isabella. Barely conscious. Barely alive. Yet still listening. Her eyes found Elena. And for the first time, fear flashed across them. Not fear of death. Fear of losing control. Fear that Elena might finally stop sacrificing. A subtle detail. Easy to miss. But important. Because Isabella wasn't reacting like someone surprised. She was reacting like someone whose plan was failing. The mystery deepened. What did Isabella know? How much did she know? Before anyone could answer, a powerful alpha aura exploded across the room. The entire infirmary shook. Windows rattled. Candles flickered. Several wolves instinctively stepped backward. The pressure was overwhelming. Dominating. Ancient. Dangerous. Riker. He had been standing silently near the entrance, watching everything, listening to everything, and now he had heard enough. Slowly, the Shadow King stepped forward. His silver eyes locked onto Adrian. Not with fear. Not with respect. With disgust. The atmosphere instantly changed. Because everyone understood one thing. A line had just been crossed. And Riker had no intention of ignoring it. He looked at Elena. Then at the silver mark. Then at the room full of people demanding her sacrifice. When he finally spoke, his voice cut through the silence like a blade. Because apparently nobody else will. The silence after Riker's words felt suffocating. Because apparently nobody else will. No one moved. No one spoke. The entire infirmary seemed frozen in place. Every eye shifted between Elena and Riker. Then toward Adrian. Waiting. Wondering. Whose side would he choose? The dying woman in the bed? Or the dying woman standing before him? For the first time in 10 years, the answer wasn't obvious. Riker stepped forward. His gaze never left Elena. Not possessive. Not romantic. Protective. And that difference mattered. Because everyone in the room could feel it. The Shadow King wasn't looking at Elena as a resource. He wasn't looking at her as a cure. He wasn't looking at her as a sacrifice. He was looking at her as a person. And somehow that made the atmosphere even more uncomfortable. The documentary truth was painful. Sometimes it takes a stranger to expose what everyone close to you refuses to see. Riker slowly turned toward the gathered healers, then toward the elders, then finally toward Adrian. What exactly have you told them? Adrian frowned. Told them what? The disappointment that crossed Riker's face was immediate, because the answer itself revealed everything. You truly don't know. A strange unease spread through the room. Elder Magnus looked away. Several healers exchanged nervous glances. Something was coming. Something important. Riker pointed toward Elena's arm, toward the silver mark spreading beneath her skin. Do any of you know what that mark means? Silence. One healer swallowed nervously. Another shook his head. Even the warriors standing guard looked confused. Riker's expression darkened. Then you've been blind. The statement hit the room like a slap. Adrian immediately stepped forward. What are you talking about? Riker's eyes locked onto him.
Cold. Sharp.
Unforgiving. One more healing. The room went silent. One more transfer. The silence deepened. One more sacrifice. Nobody breathed. Then Riker delivered the truth. She dies tonight. The words struck harder than thunder. Several healers gasped. One servant nearly collapsed. Even Isabella's eyes widened. The room exploded into whispers.
No.
That's impossible. It can't be. Not Elena. Shock spread everywhere. Because, until this moment, most people had never considered Elena mortal. She was the healer, the savior, the solution, not the victim, never the victim. Yet suddenly the reality became impossible to ignore. The person saving everyone was dying, and she had been dying for years. Riker continued, his voice steady, brutal, relentless. Every transfer takes life. You all knew that. Several elders lowered their heads. But none of you bothered asking how much life remained. The accusation landed heavily, because nobody could deny it. Nobody. The truth stood in front of them.
Pale. Weak.
Exhausted. And everyone suddenly realized they had watched her deteriorate for years, without doing anything, without asking questions, without caring enough to stop it. The emotional shock spread through the room, like a wave. One servant started crying. A healer sat down heavily. Even several warriors looked ashamed, because now they could see it. The trembling hands, the exhausted eyes, the fading wolf, the weakness. It had all been there, right in front of them, the entire time. They simply chose not to notice. The documentary truth was devastating. People rarely ignore suffering because they are evil. They ignore it because acknowledging it would force them to change. And change is uncomfortable, especially when the suffering benefits them. Adrian stared at Elena. Actually stared. For the first time in years. Not through her. Not past her. At her. His eyes slowly traveled over her face. The dark circles. The pale skin. The exhaustion. The silver veins beneath her wrist. How had he never seen it?
How?
Then a horrible realization struck him. Riker hadn't discovered something new. He had simply pointed at something that had always been there. And Adrian had ignored it. The realization hit hard. Too hard. Almost whispering, Adrian spoke. I never asked. The room went silent again. His voice cracked. I never asked how much it cost. Nobody answered. Because it was true. Not once. Not after the first healing. Not after the 10th. Not after the 100th. Not once. He never asked. The admission shattered something inside Elena. Because hearing him finally admit it somehow hurt more than the years themselves. Not once. The words echoed endlessly. Not once. Meanwhile, on the infirmary bed, Isabella listened in silence. Fear continued growing behind her eyes. Real fear. Not for Elena. For herself. Because for the first time, the cycle might actually end. And Isabella desperately needed it to continue. A tiny detail, easy to miss, yet deeply revealing. Across the room, Elder Magnus finally spoke, his voice heavy with guilt. Riker is telling the truth. Every eye turned toward him. The old elder looked broken. I've spent years studying the mark. The blessing should never have progressed this far. Another revelation. Another shock. Another betrayal. Magnus knew, at least partially, and he had remained silent. The room became increasingly uncomfortable. How many people knew pieces of the truth? How many warnings had been ignored? How many opportunities had been wasted? Questions multiplied. Answers remained scarce. Then Riker stepped beside Elena. His alpha aura expanded again. Not aggressively, protectively. The difference was obvious. And dangerous. Because every wolf in the room recognized what was happening. The Shadow King had made a decision. And powerful men rarely changed their minds. Adrian noticed it too. His jaw tightened. What are you doing? Riker's answer came instantly. What should have been done years ago? The tension exploded. Several warriors instinctively moved, unsure who they should obey. Their future alpha, or the most feared alpha on the continent. The atmosphere became volatile. One wrong word could start a war. Then Riker spoke a phrase few wolves had ever heard. A phrase buried within ancient alpha law. A phrase so old most believed it was legend. I invoke the right of protection. The room froze. Every elder stood immediately. Even Magnus looked stunned. Because the right of protection was sacred, ancient, absolute. If an alpha could prove another wolf was being exploited, abused, or sacrificed by those responsible for their care, he could legally remove them from that environment. Temporarily. Without challenge. Without interference. Without permission. The law existed to prevent exactly this kind of tragedy. No one had invoked it in generations.
Until now.
Shock swept through the room. Adrian's face lost all color. Because he understood what it meant. Riker wasn't asking. He was taking Elena. Legally.
Publicly.
Immediately. The Shadow King turned toward Elena. For the first time all night, his voice softened. You're coming with me. Not an order. Not a demand. A promise. The promise of safety.
Of rest.
Of survival. And for the first time in 10 years, someone had finally chosen Elena. Not for what she could give. Not for what she could heal. Not for what she could sacrifice. For her. As Riker extended his hand, the entire kingdom seemed to hold its breath. And for the first time, Adrian realized he might actually lose her. The journey began before sunrise. No celebrations. No ceremonies. No farewells. Only silence. Silverclaw Kingdom watched from a distance as Alpha Riker's procession departed with Elena among them. Some wolves felt relieved. Some felt guilty. Some felt angry. But one man stood completely still. Adrian. Watching. Unable to stop her. Unable to follow. Unable to convince himself that everything would somehow return to normal. For the first time in 10 years, Elena was no longer within his reach. The documentary truth was simple. People rarely appreciate what they have while it is constantly available. Only when it disappears do they notice the emptiness. And Adrian was beginning to feel it. Meanwhile, Elena spent most of the journey asleep. Not because she wanted to, because her body demanded it. The exhaustion ran deeper than she had realized. Years deeper. Every time she woke, food waited beside her. Water waited beside her. Medicine waited beside her. Nobody asked for anything. Nobody requested a healing. Nobody discussed Isabella. Nobody mentioned sacrifice. The difference felt strange. Almost uncomfortable. Because Elena had spent so many years living for other people that she had forgotten what it felt like to simply exist. When they finally arrived at Riker's kingdom, another surprise awaited her. No throne room. No political meeting. No formal introductions. No expectations. Riker immediately escorted her to a private estate overlooking a mountain lake.
Quiet.
Peaceful. Hidden from the world. You'll stay here. Elena blinked. That's it. Riker nodded. That's it. No conditions. No demands. No obligations. Nothing. The simplicity confused her. For years, every kindness she received had come with expectations. This one didn't. The first week passed quietly. Elena slept. A lot. More than she had in years. sometimes 14 hours, sometimes 16. The healers monitoring her condition seemed encouraged. One even smiled. A healthy wolf sleeps when her body is healing. This statement startled Elena.
Healing.
The word felt unfamiliar when applied to her. Usually, she was the one healing others, never herself. Days became weeks. Gradually, color returned to her face. The dark circles beneath her eyes began fading. Her appetite returned. Her strength improved.
Slowly.
Painfully slowly. But it improved. For the first time in years, Elena started feeling alive. The emotional contrast became impossible to ignore. Every morning breakfast appeared, not because someone needed her, because she needed it. Every evening healers checked her condition, not because they needed something from her, because they were worried about her. The difference was profound and terrifying, because it forced Elena to confront a painful question. Had anyone in Silverclaw ever cared for her this way? The answer frightened her. Meanwhile, Riker remained exactly the same. Respectful, distant, consistent. He never forced conversations, never demanded explanations, never pressured her into sharing her pain, never asked for repayment, never reminded her of what he had done, never used her gratitude against her. Nothing. The documentary truth was revealing itself. Genuine kindness rarely announces itself. It simply appears consistently, day after day, choice after choice, without asking for applause. One evening, Elena found Riker standing near the lake, watching the sunset. She approached quietly. For several moments, neither spoke. Then she finally asked the question that had been bothering her for weeks. "Why did you help me?" Riker remained silent, long enough for her to think he might ignore the question. Then he answered, "Because nobody else was." Simple.
Direct.
Honest. The answer struck harder than anything else he could have said. Because there was no hidden agenda, no grand speech, no manipulation, just truth. For the first time, Elena looked away, unable to hide the emotion building inside her. Elsewhere, Silverclaw Kingdom was falling apart. Not politically, emotionally. The absence of Elena was becoming noticeable. Very noticeable. The infirmary felt different. The palace felt different. The kingdom felt different. Servants realized nobody was organizing supplies anymore. The healers realized nobody was assisting during emergencies anymore. The elders realized nobody was mediating conflicts anymore. One by one, people began noticing all the things Elena had quietly done, all the burdens she carried, all the responsibilities she absorbed, all the sacrifices she made. And suddenly the kingdom felt emptier. Adrian noticed it most, because Isabella's condition had worsened again. Without Elena, there was no miracle, no solution, no easy answer. For the first time in 10 years, Adrian was being forced to confront consequences. And he hated it. Not because Elena had left, because he was beginning to understand why. Back in Riker's territory, another mystery was quietly unfolding. Elder Magnus had not remained in Silverclaw. Days after Elena's departure, he secretly traveled to Riker's kingdom, bringing records, ancient texts, and decades of research. The silver mark haunted him. Something about it wasn't right. The progression,
The speed.
the pattern. None of it matched historical accounts. So he kept searching, night after night, scroll after scroll, book after book, until finally, he found it. The answer. The discovery left him speechless. Because the silver mark wasn't merely tracking Elena's sacrifices. It was tracking something else. Something far more dangerous. Far more powerful. Magnus immediately requested an emergency meeting. Riker arrived. Several healers arrived. And Elena was summoned. The old elder looked pale, disturbed,
Shaken.
The room instantly became tense. Because everyone understood one thing. Magnus had found something important. Something big. The old wolf slowly unrolled an ancient scroll. One older than any kingdom currently standing. His hands trembled. Then he pointed toward an illustration. A silver mark. Identical to Elena's. The room went silent. Elena's heart began pounding. Because suddenly she wasn't looking at her future. She was looking at someone else's past. Magnus swallowed hard, then spoke the words that changed everything. The mark isn't a death sentence. Confusion swept through the room. Several healers exchanged glances. Elena frowned. If it wasn't a death sentence, then what was it? The old elder looked directly at her. Fear and wonder mixed within his eyes. Then he revealed the truth. The mark is an awakening. Silence. Absolute silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Because that answer only created a much bigger question. The revelation about the silver mark changed everything. An awakening. Not a death sentence. An awakening. The words echoed through Elena's mind for days. Because they explained one mystery, while creating 10 more. If the mark wasn't killing her, and, most importantly, what exactly was awakening inside her? The documentary truth was becoming clear. Every great deception eventually reaches a point where it can no longer sustain itself. Too many lies. Too many witnesses. Too many loose ends. And Luna Celeste's carefully constructed deception was beginning to crack. Back in Silverclaw Kingdom, the investigation exploded. The fire. The poison reports. The missing medical records. The healer testimonies. The inconsistencies. Everything that had remained buried for years suddenly began surfacing. Because once one person starts asking questions, others often find the courage to do the same. Elder Magnus' departure had created a ripple effect. Several former healers came forward. Then another. Then another. At first anonymously, then publicly. One healer admitted that years earlier he had discovered poison traces inside Isabella's blood. Another confessed that he had reported his findings, only for the report to disappear. A third healer revealed he had been threatened into silence. The revelations spread rapidly. The kingdom entered chaos. Every new confession created another question. Who kept suppressing the evidence? Who kept protecting the poisoner? Who possessed enough authority to silence healers for 10 years? The answers finally began appearing. And every answer pointed toward the same person. Luna Celeste. At first nobody believed it. They couldn't. She was respected, admired,
Trusted.
the future Luna, the kingdom's moral example. Yet the evidence continued growing. Former servants came forward. Secret payments were uncovered. Witness accounts surfaced. Hidden records emerged. Every trail led back to her. One by one. Without exception. Meanwhile, Adrian was watching his entire world collapse. Because every new revelation destroyed another illusion. Every report. Every witness. Every confession. All proving the same thing. Someone had manipulated Isabella's illness. For years. And somehow he had never noticed. The emotional shock became unbearable. Not because he trusted strangers. Because he trusted his mother.
Completely.
Unconditionally. Yet now even he could no longer ignore the evidence. The confrontation happened 3 days later. The entire council assembled. Elders. Warriors.
Healers.
Witnesses. Nobles. The largest gathering Silverclaw had seen in years. At the center stood Luna Celeste.
Calm.
Elegant. Unbothered. As if she already knew what was coming. The atmosphere felt suffocating. Adrian stepped forward, holding the poison reports. His hands trembling. His voice unsteady. Tell me this isn't true. The room fell silent. Everyone waited. For excuses. For denial. For outrage. Instead, Celeste smiled. A small smile. A terrifying smile. Because for the first time in the entire story, she stopped pretending. The mask disappeared. And the real woman emerged. I was wondering how long it would take. Shock rippled through the council chamber. Several elders gasped. A servant dropped a tray. Adrian simply stared, unable to believe what he had heard. She wasn't denying it. She wasn't even trying. The betrayal landed harder than any confession. Because she seemed relieved. Relieved the secret was finally out. The documentary truth was brutal. Sometimes the most dangerous people are not those who hide their darkness. They're the ones who believe their darkness was justified. And Celeste believed exactly that. Adrian's voice cracked. You poisoned Isabella. For the first time, Celeste laughed. Not cruelly, not hysterically, almost pityingly. Then she delivered the biggest revelation yet.
No.
Silence. Absolute silence. Everyone froze. Because that answer made no sense. The evidence was overwhelming. The poison was real. The reports were real. The victims were real. Then, who had she been targeting? Celeste's eyes slowly moved across the room, until they settled on Adrian. Then she answered, "I was never trying to kill Isabella." The silence deepened. Adrian felt his stomach drop, because suddenly he knew exactly what she was about to say. The answer he didn't want. The answer that explained everything. Celeste looked directly at him, then spoke. Elena was always the target. The room exploded.
Shouts. Gasps.
Disbelief. Chaos. Every conversation erupted simultaneously, because the statement redefined the entire story. Every poisoning. Every collapse. Every emergency. Every healing. Every sacrifice. It had never been about Isabella. Not really. It had always been about Elena. The realization hit everyone at once, including Adrian, especially Adrian, because for 10 years, he had personally delivered Elena into the trap. Again, and again,
and again.
The emotional weight crushed him. His knees nearly buckled. Meanwhile, Celeste remained calm,
Composed. Certain.
as though she had expected this reaction. The questions came immediately.
Why?
Why target Elena? Why spend 10 years orchestrating this nightmare? Why manipulate Isabella? Why destroy your son's mate? Even the elders looked horrified, because none of it made sense. Not yet. Then Celeste revealed the truth. Or, at least part of it. The moon healing blessing was never her true gift. The room went silent again. Every eye turned toward her. Every person suddenly remembering the silver mark. The awakening. The prophecy. The hidden records. Everything connected. But not completely. Not yet. One final piece remained missing. One final answer. Celeste slowly approached the council table, placed both hands upon the ancient wood, then looked directly toward the gathered elders, toward Adrian, toward the witnesses, toward the kingdom. For the first time, genuine fear appeared in her eyes. Not fear of punishment, fear of what Elena might become. And when she finally spoke, her voice barely rose above a whisper. The blessing was only the beginning. The words settled over the room like a curse, because suddenly everyone understood. The healing gift, the poison, the sacrifices, the silver mark, the awakening. None of those things were the destination. They were preparation. Preparation for something far bigger, far older, far more dangerous. And for the first time, the kingdom realized they didn't truly know Elena at all. The council chamber remained silent long after Luna, Celeste's final words. The blessing was only the beginning. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because suddenly every sacrifice Elena had made carried a terrifying new meaning. Not an ending. A preparation. Not a punishment. A transformation. The documentary truth was unsettling. The most dangerous secrets are not the ones hidden from enemies. They are the ones hidden from the people being protected or controlled. And for 10 years, Elena had unknowingly been both. Across the chamber, Adrian slowly lifted his head. His entire world had already collapsed, yet somehow it continued getting worse. What prophecy? His voice sounded hollow, broken. The voice of a man who no longer trusted anything. Celeste looked at him. For a brief moment, she almost appeared sad. Then she spoke. 20 years ago, I discovered an ancient prophecy buried within the moon archives. Several elders immediately stiffened, because the moon archives contained records so old most wolves considered them legends. Not history. Legends. Celeste continued. The prophecy spoke of a woman born beneath a silver moon. Across the kingdom, miles away in Riker's territory, Elena suddenly remembered the words Elder Magnus had spoken at her birth. Born beneath a silver moon. The phrase had followed her entire life. And now it was returning. The council listened in silence. The prophecy said she would possess the moon blessing. Another revelation. Everything connected. The blessing. The silver mark. The awakening. None of it was random. None of it was accidental. The prophecy had predicted everything. Celeste slowly opened an ancient scroll. Yellowed with age. Fragile. Forbidden. Then she read aloud. When the final sacrifice is given and the blessing is exhausted, the daughter of the silver moon shall awaken. A chill swept through the chamber. Several elders exchanged worried glances, because they already suspected what came next. But hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Celeste's expression darkened. Her true power will surpass every Luna before her. The room erupted. Shocked whispers.
Fear.
Disbelief. Questions. Because Luna power already shaped kingdoms. What kind of power could surpass every Luna in history? What kind of power could terrify Celeste enough to orchestrate 10 years of suffering? The mystery finally received its answer. Celeste had never feared Elena's weakness. She feared Elena's potential. The revelation changed everything. The poison, the sacrifices, the delays, the manipulation. Every decision had served the same purpose. Prevent the awakening. At any cost. The documentary Truth was tragic. Some people become villains while trying to stop a future only they can see. And in the process, they create the very future they fear. Adrian stared at his mother, unable to recognize her anymore. You destroyed her life because of a prophecy? The accusation echoed through the chamber. For the first time, Celeste hesitated. Not because she regretted it, because she knew how terrible it sounded. Then she answered, I protected this kingdom. Several elders immediately looked away, because part of them understood her fear. Yet none could defend her actions. Not anymore. Then another voice spoke.
Weak. Shaking.
Unexpected.
Isabella.
Every eye turned toward her. She had been sitting silently for most of the hearing.
Pale.
Unstable. Watching everything unravel. Now she slowly stood. And for the first time, she stopped pretending too. The atmosphere instantly changed, because something about her expression felt different. Not fearful, resigned, almost defeated. Adrian frowned. Isabella? Tears filled her eyes. Not innocent tears. Not victim tears. Guilty tears. And suddenly Elena's mysterious letters. The poison. The meetings. The collapses. Everything began aligning. One terrible piece at a time. Isabella lowered her head, then whispered. I knew. Silence. Absolute silence. The words barely registered at first. Then realization hit. She knew. She knew. Not suspected. Not guessed.
Knew.
The room exploded. Several elders stood. One healer cursed aloud. Adrian simply stared, his face drained of all color. Because this betrayal somehow hurt more than Celeste's. Celeste had manipulated him. Isabella had accepted it. Knowingly. The difference mattered. The emotional shock spread like wildfire. Years of lies suddenly gained new meaning. Years of tears. Years of collapses. Years of desperate rescues. Years of Elena's suffering. And Isabella had known. The entire time. The documentary Truth was devastating. The worst betrayal isn't deception. It's watching someone sacrifice everything for you. And allowing it to continue. Isabella's tears finally spilled. I knew about the poison. The room froze again. Another confession. Another wound. Another betrayal. Adrian's breathing became uneven. Isabella continued, each word making things worse. I knew about the reports. I knew about the relapses. I knew Elena was healing me. I knew it was hurting her. Every confession landed harder than the last. The council chamber felt suffocating. Several servants began crying. Even the healers looked horrified. Yet Isabella wasn't finished. Because the truth had finally become impossible to contain. Her voice cracked. I hated her. The honesty shocked everyone. Not because of the hatred. Because of the rawness. The ugliness. The vulnerability. No excuses. No lies. Just truth. I hated that she was chosen. Another confession. I hated that she was your mate. Another. I hated that everyone loved her. Another. I hated that no matter what happened. Her voice broke. You always looked at her differently. The room went still, because suddenly this wasn't about destiny, or prophecy, or poison. It was about obsession, jealousy, envy, the oldest poison of all. Isabella wiped her tears, then delivered the final confession, the one that shattered whatever sympathy remained. I wanted her place. No one spoke, because there was nothing left to say. She had finally admitted everything. The manipulation, the jealousy, the poison, the deception, the obsession, the desire to become Luna. The truth stood exposed for everyone to see. Then came the final shock, the one nobody expected. Isabella suddenly laughed. A strange laugh, small, bitter, almost hopeless. The sound unsettled everyone. Adrian frowned. What did you do? For the first time, fear appeared in Isabella's eyes. Real fear. The kind that comes when consequences can no longer be avoided. Her hands began trembling. Her breathing became uneven. Then she whispered the words that turned the entire chamber cold. I took another dose. Confusion. Then horror. Several healers immediately moved. What? When? How much? Questions erupted everywhere. Isabella looked toward the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze, and finally answered. Hours ago. The room exploded into chaos, because everyone suddenly understood. She had done it again, believing Elena would save her, believing the cycle would continue, believing there would always be one more sacrifice, one more healing, one more miracle. But Elena wasn't here anymore. And this time, the poison was already inside her, working, spreading,
Killing.
as panic erupted around her. Isabella slowly lifted her head, and for the first time all night, she looked truly afraid. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Healers rushed toward Isabella. Elders shouted orders. Servants scrambled in every direction. But none of it mattered, because the moment Isabella admitted she had taken another dose, everyone understood the truth. This poison wasn't like the previous ones. There would be no preparation, no intervention, no carefully timed rescue. The poison was already spreading.
Fast.
The documentary truth was merciless. For years Isabella had gambled with death because she believed someone else would always pay the price. Tonight, for the first time, she was gambling alone. The healers examined her immediately. Their expressions turned grim, then terrified. One healer looked toward Adrian, his face pale. We can't stop it. The room went silent. Another healer checked again, then again, desperate, hoping he was wrong. He wasn't. It's moving too quickly. The poison was already attacking her wolf, already entering her bloodstream, already shutting down her organs. The process had begun, and there was no reversing it. For the first time in years, Isabella was truly dying. Across the room, Adrian stood frozen, because suddenly everything felt horribly familiar. The panic, the desperation, the fear. He had seen it countless times before. Every collapse, every emergency, every crisis, and every single time, there had been Elena, always saving the day, always paying the price. The realization hit harder than any revelation. For 10 years, Adrian never feared losing Isabella, because Elena always stood between Isabella and death. Now that shield was gone, and death was finally collecting its debt. Meanwhile, miles away in Riker's territory, Elena sat beside the mountain lake. The moon reflected across the water. Peaceful.
Silent.
For the first time in years, she felt calm. No emergency bells. No desperate summons. No demands. No expectations. Then suddenly, pain exploded through her silver mark. Elena gasped, clutching her wrist. The mark pulsed violently, almost as if reacting to something far away. Something ending. Something finally breaking. Back in Silverclaw Kingdom, Isabella's condition deteriorated rapidly. Minutes felt like hours. Every breath became harder. Every heartbeat weaker. The panic in her eyes grew, because for the first time, she truly understood. There would be no miracle, no healing circle, no silver light, no Elena. Reality was finally arriving, and it was terrifying. The documentary truth was tragic. Sometimes we don't appreciate what someone means to us until they stop carrying us. By then, it is often too late. Isabella suddenly grabbed Adrian's arm.
Hard. Desperate.
Terrified. Get her. Her voice cracked. Get Elena. The room fell silent, because everyone understood exactly what she meant. Even now, even after the confessions, even after the betrayal, even after everything, a part of Isabella still expected Elena to save her. Like always. Because Elena always had. Adrian looked away, unable to answer, unable to speak, unable to admit the truth. Elena couldn't save her. Not anymore. Not ever again. Not because she wouldn't. Because she physically couldn't. The blessing was exhausted. The cost had already been paid. For 10 years. Isabella slowly realized it too. The understanding appeared gradually. Then all at once, her eyes widened. The fear disappeared, replaced by something worse. Regret. Pure regret. For the first time, she saw the entire truth. Every birthday she survived. Every winter she survived. Every illness she survived. Every year she survived. All of it existed because of Elena, the woman she hated, the woman she envied, the woman she tried to destroy, the woman she spent 10 years stealing from, was the only reason she lived. Tears streamed down Isabella's face. Real tears. Not manipulation. Not performance. Not strategy. Truth. The ugliest truth of all. She had spent years trying to replace the very person keeping her alive. The irony was unbearable. Minutes later, the poison reached her heart. The healers stepped back. There was nothing left to do. No treatment. No cure. No miracle. Only consequences. Isabella's final breath left her quietly. No dramatic speech. No final manipulation. No victory. Just silence. The woman who poisoned herself for years to trap Elena died from the poison she believed Elena would always heal. Justice had finally arrived. And it looked nothing like revenge. The documentary truth was simple. Sometimes the most devastating punishment is facing the consequences you spent years avoiding. The council chamber remained silent. Nobody celebrated. Nobody spoke. Because the tragedy felt bigger than Isabella. It exposed everyone. Every excuse. Every failure. Every selfish decision. Then Adrian broke. Not physically. Emotionally. Completely. The collapse was total. He remembered the first healing. The second. The 10th. The 100th. 10 years. 10 years of sacrifices. 10 years of warnings. 10 years of signs. 10 years of opportunities to stop. And not once, had he chosen Elena first. The realization crushed him. Because for the first time, there was nobody left to blame. Not Isabella. Not Celeste. Not fate. Not prophecy. Him. Only him. Meanwhile, beneath the moonlit sky of Riker's territory, the silver mark suddenly erupted. A burst of radiant light exploded from Elena's wrist. The mountain lake illuminated. The trees shook. Ancient energy surged through the valley. Every wolf nearby felt it. Riker immediately appeared. Elder Magnus followed. Neither spoke. Neither interrupted. Because they understood. The awakening had begun. The silver mark spread across Elena's arm. Then her shoulder. Then vanished completely. Not consumed. Completed. Finished. Fulfilled. The pain disappeared. The weakness disappeared. The exhaustion disappeared. For 10 years the blessing had drained her. Now it returned everything. Every sacrifice. Every year. Every fragment of stolen life. The power awakening inside Elena wasn't violent. It wasn't destructive. It wasn't cruel. It was beautiful. Ancient. Radiant. Like moonlight given form. Like hope. Like healing itself. The prophecy had never been about destruction. It had been about restoration. The greatest irony of all, the power Celeste feared most, was never a threat. Months later, Silverclaw Kingdom changed. Luna Celeste was stripped of every title, every honor, every privilege, publicly exposed, publicly disgraced, publicly banished. The woman who manipulated an entire kingdom lost everything she had spent decades building. The prophecy she feared had become the reason for her downfall. And nobody stopped it. Nobody defended her. Because truth no longer needed defending. It stood on its own. Time moved forward.
Slowly.
Naturally. The kingdom healed. The wounds remained. But they began healing. As all wounds eventually do. And for the first time in her life, Elena lived for herself. Not as a sacrifice. Not as a cure. Not as someone else's solution. As Elena. Months later, during a spring festival in Riker's territory, laughter echoed across a flower-covered hillside. Elena stood among friends.
Healthy. Strong. Alive.
The sunlight danced across her silver hair. And for the first time in years, her smile reached her eyes. Nearby, Riker watched quietly. Not possessive. Not controlling. Simply present.
As he always had been.
A partner. An equal. A safe place. Far away, Adrian watched from a distance. Not hidden. Not forbidden. Just distant. The way he had allowed Elena to become distant years ago. He watched her laugh. Watched her live. Watched her shine. And finally understood something that would haunt him forever. He didn't lose Elena when Riker took her away. He lost her the first time she suffered.
And he chose not to see it.
The first time she sacrificed.
And he chose not to ask.
The first time she needed him. And he chose someone else. That was the day he truly lost her. Everything afterward was simply the consequence. And as Elena's laughter carried across the spring wind, for the first time in 10 years, she was free.